I'm in the car. You probably are not going to be able to hear me as well as you might otherwise hope to. So just bear with me. I apologize for the sound, but I'm on my phone in the car. Um, but, well, let me try to unplug this. Okay. Maybe that'll help you hear a little bit better. But I just listened to Harsh Reality's newest commentary that he put up. And so this is a sort of Dear Harsh Reality, I'm the opposition letter. Okay? The kind opposition. Now, there's a few issues here, and I do absolutely respect his messaging, and that is, we don't have any proof in our hands that Brian Koberger is any of the things that people think he is. There's people that, as Harsh Reality said, judge, jury, and executioner of Brian Koberger. And then there's the opposite side, the side that says, no, he's a nice guy. Or, in fairness, he could be a nice guy. That we should keep an open mind to consider the possibility that he's a fairly good guy. Okay? All right, so I have some problems. We got bad traffic in Kima. So I have a few issues with this idea. Yeah, I agree with Harsh Reality. He's right. And in our system of government, people are innocent till they're proven guilty in a court of law. And you are given the presumption of innocence, and if you can't afford an attorney, then we pay for you to have an attorney, and that's to the any sort of doubt gets to get onto the defendant's side. That it's better to have a guilty person go free than it is to have an innocent person spend the rest of their life in prison. Okay, so I'm aware of all that. Here's my problem. There's something to be said for human behavior. We know that people's behavior is predictable given context and history. Okay, so when you said, so I was listening, you had me, and right up until you got to the part that said, we don't know anything about Brian Koberger. Yes, we do. We do. At the very basic level, what we know is that his family, his mom, his dad, his two sisters, in fact, I've heard that only the father, now this, you don't know this is true or not, but I've heard that only the father was skeptical about his potential involvement, right? But that the women of the family, the two sisters, both educated women, and the mother, that all three of them legitimately, not in passing, not a joke, ha, look, Brian, they have your kind of car, did you do this? No, these people really and truly thought, oh my God, could it be? I mean, even in the slightest possibility. And they went out in the middle of the night to see if they could see anything in the car. And I will be willing to bet that someone's job was to stay back at the house to make sure that Brian didn't wake up and come out and them get caught looking at the car. Now, I'm going to ask you this. This doesn't require you to know Brian Koberger. You don't have to know him. You only have to know yourself. You only have to know the people in your life. You only have to know your friends. What would it take for you to spontaneously say, wow, Nicole, let's say Nicola Bully, they said they're looking for a car. Somebody saw a car there where she went missing. And it's actually, daughter has the same kind of car. That's crazy. Maybe it was her. Maybe I should ask her. No, it wouldn't even occur to you. You might think in passing, okay, that's weird, got the same kind of car. You might make a joke. Ooh, did you do something? But what you're not likely to do is go to your daughter and say, honey, I don't want to upset you, but let me ask you this question. Is it possible that you were there about the same time that Nicola Bully went missing? Is that possible? You wouldn't do that, number one, because it just wouldn't be something that you could consider to be a reality. And number two, you certainly wouldn't want to hurt her feelings without some real reason beyond, oh, look, you and 67,000 other people drive the same car. So I think without knowing anything else at all, I think it is quite interesting that something about the sisters and or the mother, that something about them felt frightened. Think about that. Now, it could come from anywhere. Yes, there are definitely families where siblings are not friends. That's there for sure. But I do believe even in those circumstances, the idea that someone that, maybe you've got a brother or sister, somebody that's not nice to you, your dad, your stepdad, someone's not nice. They've been mean to you. They've even hit you. They've been violent against you. To make the leap that the monster that went in and massacred 4 young people in their own beds, that monster in any way could be a reality in your life. That's one of those things in the world that you say, that doesn't happen to me, that happens to other people. Oh, we don't get cancer in our family. Cancer happens to other people. We don't get murdered in our family. Other people have murders. And we don't have a murderer in our family. That's something that happens to other families that are not very nice. That's the natural mindset. You don't have to think your way through it. That's just the way that's just the generic worldview that most of us have as we kind of sleepwalk our way through life. And yet here is a family, well, they didn't seem to have that, did they? Something about them said, should we look? I cannot even imagine what it would take for me to make that leap. So there is one little piece of, just a teeny tiny little piece of information where you are right. We don't know Brian. As far as I know, none of the YouTube creators or subscribers have gone in and done, spoken to Brian, had a sit down conversation with Brian. None of those things have happened. But his family knew him. His family knows him and has had many interactions and conversations. And their reaction was, we better look at the car. That is important. All right. And here's another thing that we know is that the best predictor of future performance is past behavior. That is absolutely almost like one of Newton's laws. Okay. Well, do we have some past behavior with Brian that led these sisters and mother to feel like maybe we better be on the safe side and just sort of take a look in the car? I mean, not that I don't know that we'll find anything, but let's just see. Let's just be curious here for a minute. That's fairly sobering. And we don't have to know anything about Brian. We just have to know ourselves. We just have to understand people in general. So that's one thing. The other thing that stands out in my mind, now I said, this whole story came out about the letter from the school that that Brian was having all these problems and he couldn't get along with the female professor and he couldn't get along with the female students and he was talking down to people and he was being rude and it was a disaster, right? And that he got identified only after a few weeks and that the male professor called him in, did a rehabilitation plan, told him things he needed to work on, and then gave him another couple of weeks, and he failed that rehabilitation plan. And within one semester, literally within one semester time, he gets kicked out and he loses his assistantship. Now I'm sitting back, because this is something I do know in the real world, and I'm thinking, that's not true. Like, there's no way that can be true. Number one, the time frame that this letter is asking us to believe is wrong. You don't have a student who's failing to perform satisfactorily and then go through due process and end up to the punitive stage where they're losing their assistantship, which is financial, so it's, governed by law. You don't do that in 3.5 months. That is the kind of thing that can take a year of due process. And sometimes students will get attorneys, and it can it's a legal process that you're going through. So when this whole letter thing came out saying, that he had lost his teaching assistantship because he'd been rude and, a bit hard on the grading and such, I called BS. A lot of people got mad at me and said, well, I'm unsubscribing. Okay, you may not like what I say, but I do know this in the real life, in the real world, and it takes much longer than 3.5 months to make someone lose financial assistance in a PhD program. So I didn't believe it when it came out. I think now we know that it wasn't a real letter. The lady that did the letter, she's come forward and claimed it. But my point is this. We did have students that were interviewed, and those students were fairly clear that that Brian was different than everybody else, and that he was setting up impossible standards, but that it was definitely easier for the guys than the girls. And this was a guy saying it, which gives it more credibility. It's not a girl who's failing her class and she's just looking for some way to stop mommy and daddy from getting mad at her. It's another student who's being judged as well by Koberger, but it's a male, and he's acknowledging, no, he really does seem to be harder on the girls than not. And if I was at home right now at my office, I would pull up a clip of the hearing and the things that are really disturbing me about Koberger's interactions with his female attorneys that are right there for all the world to see. And there's some real red flags there. So I don't know why we would say, it seems like in order to make this leap, that the cops dropped the ball and did a terrible investigation, and that the district attorney and the charging prosecutor, that they lied on their affidavit, and that the police lied about 911 calls and who was there at the time and such, and that 2 teenage girls, both I believe aren't they 18, 19 years old, right? So you got 2 teenage girls first time at college, and they have been turned into, while all your empathy is for Brian Koberger, where is the empathy for these 2 young ladies? Whether you want to try to make them 40-year-old seasoned detectives or not is up to you. But the fact of the matter is, these are upper middle class kids, 18, 19 years old. They've lived a heavily protected life, and they are now being faced with really what looks like a movie to them. It's such a nightmare. It's such a horrific snapshot in time. And they don't respond in a way that you and I believe they should have. But coming from the mother of a young woman who's just about the same age, just about the same level of experience in the world, wouldn't surprise me one bit if she was confronted with the death of a student and her response was to call one of her friends, one of the guys, somebody to take that position of surrogate parent. I wouldn't be surprised. I'd be mad. I'd raise holy hell. What do you mean you haven't called 911? Get off the phone with me and call 911 now. I mean, I wouldn't be gentle. I'd be like, honey, it's a crime that you're not calling 911. But I'm scared. Yeah, I know you're scared. I'm scared too. But there are laws, and you must call the authorities. You must do it now. And I'll tell you something else, child. Every word coming out of your mouth to the authorities better be absolutely the truth. And that, but my point that I can see how this would play out so clearly in my mind is that is what makes me so accepting of, they were scared. Those girls were just scared. They didn't know what the hell they were doing. And I agree, once the sun came up, they woke up and they said, oh my God, what do we do? Oh, let's call the big brothers. Let's call the big sisters. And I'm referring to Greek life. And any of you that have had kids that have gone through the whole Greek system, you know what I'm talking about. It's exactly what they would do, would be to call their big brothers or their big sisters. So I know it's not popular. I know it's not what we want. We want to think that our young people, we're going to send them off to college and they're going to instantly turn 30 years old and wise. And when they're confronted with a crime, that they're going to respond in a way that is not only legally exact, but in a manner that would make us proud. Okay, I know that. And that, you know, a lot of times I say things and people don't like that I say it, but I'm just trying to say what is human nature and what they do. I have a suspicion, and I voiced it before, I have a suspicion that at least one of those girls may not have even been at that house that night. And when they came in at 9:30 in the morning, I think that's what time they said somebody saw the door open. Maybe they got dropped off at 9:30 in the morning and they were just walking into this nightmare. And for whatever reason, the relationship with the parents is too complicated. They cannot admit to their parents that they weren't there. Maybe they spent the night with a guy. You don't know, right? You don't know. But I'm talking to you from a position of reality. These are our kids, but we're proud of them. We want them to be the best of the best. But they still. How many of us have been confronted with murder? How many of us have been in a house at the same time that a person is murdered? It's a rare occurrence. And we don't really know how we would react as 40, 50, 60-year-old people, much less 18 years old, first time away from home. So to call older classmates, especially in the Greek system, to call them for guidance isn't a far cry. That is not unusual. It's not optimal. Don't get me wrong. I don't think it was okay. They made a bad choice, 100%. But I don't think that is enough to convict them of somehow they are drug dealers. That the reason that it took so long for them to contact 911 is because they were cleaning up all the meth and fentanyl and heroin. Where's our empathy? If we're going to be empathetic for a man whose family went outside and searched his car because something in his past made them think, oh, this could be him. We're going to have empathy for him. Why are we not showing the same level of empathy and exception for Dylan and Bethany? That doesn't make sense to me. There is a lot more proof, evidence, if we want to call it that, stories, anecdotal stories. There's a lot more that would feed into, is Brian Kohberger the kind of person that might be capable of doing something like this? There's a lot more that stands to affirm that than the question of, is there anecdotal evidence or proof or stories that would show that these two 18, 19-year-old girls are drug addicts and dealers? And the answer is, of course not. For one thing, one of the biggest things that stands out, you wouldn't typically see a drug addict satisfying the requirements for college and graduating. You want to know why? Because college requires abstract thought, and drugs of any manner destroy abstraction. So it just doesn't work, doesn't fit. Yes, as someone pointed out, you can be a drug dealer and not be using drugs, but other than Russell Crowe and Denzel Washington, who would do that? Most drug dealers are using. Ask the cops. So, and here's my final point. This is the real overarching reason for voicing this, is that the counter, I hate to say pro Kohberger, because I don't think anybody is pro Kohberger. You would have to know him in order to be for him. I think it is pro innocent till proven guilty, right? I think that might possibly be more accurate. So the group that is pro we're innocent till we're proven guilty in court of law, they're saying you don't have any proof that Kohberger did this. You're making all these videos, you're making all this commentary about Brian Kohberger, what a horrible person he is, or what a horrible thing he did, and you don't have any proof. You don't know him, you haven't seen any of the evidence, you have nothing. They're also claiming that the arrest affidavit says things it doesn't say, which is weird, because you can read the arrest affidavit. The arrest affidavit does clearly say that they know through digital evidence he was there 12 times in just several weeks' time. He was there. Oh, usually in the middle of the night. Not always in the middle of the night, but generally it was in the middle of the night. They want to, the pro innocent or proven guilty, they want to ignore that. They don't want to listen to that. They want to say, we need proof. But we're not the jury. We're not the prosecutors. We're not the detectives. All we are people that sit down in front of a camera and talk about our opinions, our thoughts, our experiences. We are not trying him. We don't have any ability to do that. We don't hold any special knowledge about the crime, or about those 4 young people that lost their lives, or about Brian Kohberger. We don't have any. It is not our standing. We have zero standing. We are standing around a virtual water fountain talking about, how about them damn Astros, man? It's just talk. It's just human discourse, and it doesn't affect in the end. It doesn't affect the outcome for Brian Kohberger or anybody else. People have been doing this, discussing crime, criminal activity. People have been doing this, I suspect, since we were all cavemen sitting around, the fire. It's a natural thing that we have to see things that are so far outside of the norm, and then to marvel at them, to discuss them, to imagine what must it have been like. But it doesn't matter how much sleuthing we do. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Here's from my position, from my point of view, my view. I read the arrest affidavit, and I accept that most cops, the majority of prosecutors, that these are principled, ethical, decent, good people, because I know a lot of them in my real life, and they're all just normal, good people. They're just regular people like me or you. I don't look at people, the prosecutors or the police, I don't read the affidavit and say, oh, look, they're lying to us. Oh, look, there's another lie. Oh, they lied there. Where's the proof? Show us the proof. Otherwise, if you don't show us the proof, this is a lie. Well, now you're going directly against what you're claiming as the pro innocent till proven guilty in a court of law, you're naturally just assuming that the cops or the prosecutor, that they have lied on their arrest affidavit, that they've lied to the judge, or that they gathered fraudulent evidence in order to lie on their arrest affidavit. There's so much machinations going on that it's curious to try to weed through it, make some sense of it. Unless the goal is you just need a sensational, extraordinary tale to tell to get a lot of views on your channel. And we all want them. We all want views. Any creator says they don't want views, they're not telling the truth. I do Wild Speculation Friday, for God's sake. I own it. I don't care. But the line that's been drawn now between the pro innocent till proven guilty and the pro Kohberger is guilty, the line that's been drawn between these two groups, it's like one side of us, we're speaking Mandarin Chinese, and the other side of us are speaking Swahili from the Congo. We're not communicating. We can't even think or consider each other's opinions because we're so far apart. So here's the reality from my point of view. I believe the arrest affidavit. I trust the investigators. Do they sometimes make mistakes? Of course, they're human. I can accept that. But I don't think that there's a group of evil, blood-sucking investigators out there that have looked at poor old Kohberger and said, oh, let's get him. He's as likely a fellow as any. Why? Why would we do that? If Brian Kohberger is this brilliant, and I don't think he is, but as for the argument, if Brian Kohberger is this brilliant mind of the future, he's going to change law enforcement. He is going to change the lives of people that have been improperly accused and convicted. He is a savior. He is destined for greatness, unlike anything that you and I could ever hope for. He is a wonderful person. Well, when they went to Pennsylvania and they began talking to the local police and to his family members and the people that know him in real life, friends and teachers and such, why didn't those people tell the cops what a great guy he was? How brilliant he was. When they went to WSU and started talking to the department head, well, tell us a little bit about Brian, because we've got a search warrant here for his office. By the way, if he had lost his job, if they had taken his assistantship, guess what? They wouldn't have collected anything out of his office because his office would be cleaned out. But they went and they said, we got a search warrant. We got to get in there and see, because, sometimes people hide bad things on their work computers thinking that'll keep them safe. By the way, what do you think of Brian? I mean, now he's been arrested, What do you think? If we were to call you as a witness, what would you say about him? Well, Brian's a hard one to understand. Nobody really feels like we know him. He doesn't engage. He didn't come to the end of the year conference for all of the criminology students. Hadn't really made any friends. Well, if that's dramatically different than what you're hearing from what a great fella he is back in Pennsylvania, the cops are going to go, wow, this is weird to be getting, you're not getting that kind of standard description. And that may heighten the police's focus. Or, we've had some trouble with him. He's pretty hard on the women. He's unruly and won't do anything that our women professors suggest. But if he's in the room with one of the men, he's respectful, he's engaging. It's dramatically different in a way that is disturbing. So I don't know why we're thinking that somebody sat down and wrote the arrest affidavit and that it's a complete work of fiction and that the cops did it just flying by the seat of their pants. Why is it the same empathy and exception that we want to show to Brian? Why is it we're not giving that same empathy and an exception to the police officers that they legitimately wanted to do a good investigation? Why? Why can't we give them that? No, I think they arrested him for a reason. And I think that the circumstantial evidence that is outlined on the arrest affidavit is very interesting. And for people that are in law enforcement, they will tell you the majority of convictions come by way of circumstantial evidence. That in a lot of ways, an attorney would rather work with circumstantial than direct evidence. So it's one thing to be on the innocent until proven guilty team or orientation, right? That worldview. 100% agreed, 100%. But I think where things are going off the rails is accusing two survivors, because the important thing is they did survive when 4 others didn't. But treating the other 2 survivors like they are engaging in heinous criminal behavior, selling fentanyl, you should be charged with attempted murder, in my opinion, or accessory to murder. Fentanyl's a killer. Hands down, no question about it. So you now have taken 2 girls who were just left mom and dad's house, now they're trying to get an education, but because they were at the wrong place at the wrong time, we're going to turn them into hardened criminals that are trying to kill others with drugs. So I don't have a problem with Kohberger is innocent until proven guilty, and we haven't seen the evidence, and we should wait until we do see the evidence. I'm good with all that. I'm on board. It's the reason that I go listen to Harsh Reality and Sleuthy Goosey and those channels, because they're exactly right to go through it and think through it critically and say, what does this mean? What does this mean? What does this mean? I don't have a problem with that. But where I really run into a problem, from the beginning I've had this problem, from the phone call by this WSU mom, WSU Kim, is this, oh, the cops are liars, man. The cops are liars. The cops are in on it. The cops are criminal. Dylan's criminal. Bethany's criminal. But not, Kohberger's not criminal. But the 4 kids that died, all criminal. Everybody's criminal, but not Brian Kohberger. That's why it's reached a point that is untenable. That's how it's gotten to a point that there's a group of people getting ever increasing angry about the messaging of being, for example, that Kohberger, again, I don't think the letter ever existed. I don't think this whole rehabilitation for assistantship, I don't think that was real. If it is real, we never would have known about it, because that is something that is protected. That's FERPA information, which is Federal Educational Rights Privacy Act, which is the same exact thing as HIPAA, except for protected healthcare information. It's protected educational information. So I don't believe the letter. I don't believe all that. It doesn't mean that it didn't happen. It doesn't mean that he wasn't in trouble. But we do know they collected evidence from his office. So at the very least, what we know for a fact is that he was using his office when he left for Christmas vacation, right? He was using his office. So I don't know. I think it'd be such a interesting change in the tone for each side to talk to each other and ask, but why do you believe that? Well, what is it that causes you to believe this? Or what causes you to believe that? that would make for a lot more interesting content than drawing a line in the sand and having this battle royal like we saw with the Chris Watts case. I don't think we need all this tribalism, but I'm the old lady of the group, right? So can't we all just get along? But I think it's a lot more interesting to have two people with dramatically opposing ideas or opinions, to have them sit down across the table together and have a conversation that says, well, this is what I believe and here's why. And then the other side say, well, this is how I see it and here's why. And then try to kind of weed through that and at least come up with don't you dare honk at me. I'm not going to block the intersection, goofy. Ooh, that person just made me mad. To sit down across from each other and have a conversation and maybe see what is it that we're both seeing the same, because that's probably what is accurate. And then all this other stuff is just dramatic hullabaloo, just talk. So, man. All right, I think I'm done. Oh, and I will say this too. I agree 100% in the dumbing down of the world's children. I don't think that is a conspiracy theory. I think it's 100%. Not only is it happening, it is continuing to happen. And here, case in point, here in Texas, the entire Houston Independent School District, that is the largest with the most students affected, they have been literally taken over by the state. And they were not taken over by the state until they went through something like 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 3, 6, 7 years of a rehabilitation plan to try to get them back on track, because they were graduating students that did not have a 3rd grade reading level. They were passing kids from one grade to the next, from elementary all the way to high school graduation, and these kids could not fill out a simple job application. They could not read or write more than 1-digit addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division. And yet the entire Houston School District, ISD, graduated these people. More than 63,000 graduates dumped out into the community with no effective way to work or get a job or to even barely communicate. No one was held accountable. 7 years of rehabilitation plans by the state and on a federal level, and they failed year after year after year after year. And finally the state came in because they had a school where they only had something like 13%. They had what was it? The 60, 70 graduates that should have been graduating, and only 13 actually completed the requirements for graduation. They didn't even hold graduation, not even for those 13. I think they should have had a damn Air Force flyover and cannons and flags and dancing ladies to celebrate those 13. But not Houston ISD. Teachers screaming and yelling about how they need more money and they need more time off, and they don't want to teach in the school, they want to teach from home, but yet they're moving kids from one grade to the next without effective communication at all. So Texas stepped in and said, we can't do this. We haven't, those 60,000 people, we have to help them. I don't know how we'll ever get them back. I don't know. The only thing that they have hope for is most of them end up in the penitentiary, because that's all they're capable of doing. They have zero skills. So I agree. This isn't just in Texas happening. This is everywhere. You should see the school system in Egypt. My God. You can't even wrap your mind around it. It's terrible. But But I don't think this is, I don't think Brian was challenging people to be their best. I think we had, and here's the reason why. Because there were people that know Brian in real life. They were classmates of his. They were friends of his. They went to college with him. And you got a standard description of Brian that he was a know-it-all. That when he would answer a question, he was overly verbose, that he used these big $5, words to make himself sound smart, and that he would drone on and on about a very complicated answer when a really direct, short, pithy response would have been more appropriate. That's the mark of someone who's trying to get some narcissistic supply. That doesn't make him a narcissist, but it definitely is a narcissistic behavior. All right, so that's just one little example. All right, I'm done. Oh, the Texas heat is killing me. It's hot. But I am on my way on a great adventure. And I will be live tomorrow. And yeah. So I think I got it out of my system. All right. Y'all have a good afternoon. Try to stay in the air conditioning, damn it.